Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're here with Rebecca Jacks, who is such an amazing human being. I'm so excited that she is even here today. Probably one of the most excited guests to have on the Inside Out. And Rebecca is a trauma, grief, and suicide loss mentor. She guides people through their pain in their healing journeys using holistic healing art forms and spiritual practices. Rebecca's got courses that are healing the loss of your suicide loss journey, which are 5 weeks, and then a short one, which I'm pretty sure. And then this whole experience happened through the loss of her brother, Jack, 3.5 years ago to suicide. But she's got an incredible story and is doing some incredible things, and I'm sure going to be seeing a lot of her. So I'm so excited to welcome you to the pod. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, Mimi. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be here and to finally have it happen. And thank you for inviting me.
It's okay. Thank you so much. We're very pleased to have you here, and I feel like everyone will be too. So to give everyone a little bit of an introduction and how you kind of want to tell your story and your side of things, what was I guess your experience, and what led you to the place that you're in today?
Okay, well, it's a loaded question, a long
Sorry,
question.
you can ease into it. I'm like, so just drop everything. I feel like I always do this. I ask, it's relaxed, it's fine. Just it doesn't have to be intense. Whatever you want to
um,
say.
yeah, so my little brother Jack passed away, like we said, 3.5 years ago. We were living over in Australia, and he passed away. He took his life, and we were living over there, and I went to his house that day because I knew something was off, and I'd been trying to reach out to him, and by the time that I got to his house, he had taken his life. And so I guess like the days, weeks, months, and even the year following that was just my life like completely flipped itself on its head. And whilst I was going through such heavy trauma and all of the trauma effects, and also wanting to pass over and be with my brother a majority of the time, I also was going through a huge spiritual awakening. Like I was communicating with my brother and excuse me, feeling and hearing him in spirit, feeling him, seeing him. And so, sorry, I have to I've got a cough.
Right, have some water.
Thank you.
It always happens
Yeah,
at the worst time.
I know. It's because I talk so much as well. So
Yeah,
my
you got to warm it up to little exercises.
yes. Um, yeah, and so all of a sudden my brother was around me in spirit, like I wasn't very spiritual before. I didn't kind of look into I didn't really know what my beliefs were, I guess, until I knew what they were, because I felt them in my bones. And obviously experiencing him around me in spirit was kind of like opening up that portal, I think, was what saved my life and helped me transition through being stuck in such heavy trauma where I was experiencing like suicidal ideation into learning how to communicate with him. And obviously the gateway to doing that and learning the ropes and communicating with him was coming through healing, and lots and lots and lots of healing. I was kind of pointed in that direction as well from spiritual teachers and counselors that I had, which is another thing, because I moved from like conventional grief therapy and counseling and like trauma specialists into that more spiritual guidance and therapy. So that was kind of like the catalyst of growth for me, because I wasn't just experiencing and healing, but I was also learning so much as well. And that then led on into studying and studying all kinds of holistic healing modalities. And then everything that was kind of birthed through me was through my own healing journey, in terms of changing my career and helping other people and serving and becoming quite mission driven. And that was quite challenging at the time, because I was really quite, I'd built my old life up so well and was really kind of settled and going places in terms of my old life. But yeah, everything just kind of went to went to the wayside, and then just started everything up again. And so now I work with people that have experienced traumatic grief and suicide loss, and yeah, it wouldn't change it for the world.
And such an incredible journey. And I am so sorry that that did happen to you, but the journey, and I guess the light that has come through the darkness, you can almost, there's so much that you can gain. And I mean, I would love to talk about the feeling of, I guess, wanting to pass over after your brother passed. I mean, I feel like that would happen a lot, but it's not something that is ever talked about at all. There's suicide loss in general is not really talked about. But what was that feeling like, if you are comfortable with talking about it? And yeah, what was it like having those feelings come up after that had happened? Because I feel like that would be very overwhelming.
It was it was strange, because it was almost like sacrificial love. It didn't feel like there was a choice or an option. So for me, it was like, well, Jack's gone. Obviously, he's gone because he wasn't happy. He's in trouble. He's in danger. Like, something bad's happened to him. Like, you automatically would go to anyone that you love if they needed your help, but you're not offered that opportunity because they decided to leave and not give you that opportunity to go and help them. So again, it's like you'll fight for that opportunity and for that chance. And the only way that I was ever able to accomplish that was by also passing over. And so for me, it was like, of course I'll do that. I mean, there's no question about it. And what seemed crazy to other people at that time was like, what? You want to die? Like, like, you want to take your life? Like, you're thinking of suicide? And it was like, yes, it's suicide, but at the same time, it didn't feel like I had been dwelling or, sitting in like pain for a long time, or planning or thinking about it. Or it was just an instant feeling of like, okay, I'm going to go. Like, I've got the green light. I have to go be with my brother. What seemed more crazy to me was that people were saying no. And it was like, what are you smoking? Like, why would I not go? You're insane. My brother is in trouble. I have to go. But actually, it was a lady. I was with a medium, and she was communicating. Jack was speaking through her, and this lady said, like, there is no guarantee that if you pass over in this way right now, that your brother's going to be there straight away. He's got his own healing to do, and he's in shock right now himself. Like, he's passed over, and to find out that he hasn't passed over, to find out that you're still very much alive, but you just don't have your physical body. But now he has to look over and watch the pain and suffering that's going on with everybody that's been left behind. So I guess, and my dad, I would say to him, please, can we go? And my dad would bargain with me and say, please, Becky, just give it another week or in another week, and keep buying some time, and just see how you feel as time goes on. So I like to talk about this because it's real, and there's pretty much 90% of people that I work with have also experienced a feeling like this, or that feeling as if it's this responsibility that you need to go over and look after them. It's like a desperation, feeling unbelievable that you would even consider staying here. Also, the pain, it's like such excruciating pain. I think it doesn't really matter what age you are, but I was 30, and for me, I really could see that I had a really good life before Jack passed away, and not realizing that pain would turn into something else over time. I just assumed that this is going to be the pain that I'm going to have to live with until I'm an old lady, and I just will not do that. It kind of felt like one of those things, like it would felt like if your dog was in pain, you would let your dog go to sleep. And that was kind of how I rationalized it. Like, I'm in pain and I need to go to sleep. But as soon as I started doing a lot of this work, and obviously that's why I believe my brother came in so hard and so fast when he did, when I was going through this, because that portal opened dramatically and quite fast. So I learned that I could live in both worlds, in his and in mine. It just that I had to study. And so all the right teachers and therapists and everything just started all forming around me at that time. And that's what really transitioned me into living. Yeah, because I was in no man's land there for a while.
And when you say his energy came in, what
Mm.
do you mean by that in terms of people that maybe haven't experienced it? What are some examples of how you kind of felt him or a bit stronger during that time?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing that happened to me was I was laying in my bedroom in Australia, and my room was, the sun was down. It was like early evening, so my room was dark, and I'd been kind of sleeping, and I opened my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, I had never seen colors like it before. Like, it was like the rainbow was shooting around my room in big balls of color, and it was like, it was like mass, it was actually like matter. It was thick, it was color. It's as if I could take a ball of it and hold this color. And I was looking at, like, where has this come from? And the most luminous colors I've ever seen. So that was the first thing. After that, I'd be just lying there, and I would feel as if I had like 4 or 5 pairs of hands all over my body, like starting at my legs, all the way up around my body, around my head, and then I'd be pinned to the bed being cuddled. And then I'd have my hair being stroked or my hair being moved, and I had like, and my heart would be racing, because the adrenaline of all of this energy around you, it's like you're in a vortex of energy, like you've walked into a bubble. It's like, whoa, I'm not on my own. And then having all of that, that was something that was happening quite often. And when I would ask for it, that's the thing, I started playing a game, like, please allow me to feel it. And then it would kick in and I'd start feeling it. Then he appeared in a photograph, a video, when we went back to the UK. We had endless amounts of, I heard him in my house, and then he started coming through a lot more after that in meditations and like journaling. He would take over my hand and he would write in journaling. And then a few times as time went on, he started speaking through my body. So his voice would come out like in trance.
Whoa. And it would
And
sound like him.
yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
And it would be like this three-way conversations. My ego would be there, and it would be like, this is crazy, don't trust this, this is not normal, what's going on. And then I guess it was like my higher self was like, just trust the process, it's really beautiful, like higher frequency, just
Ethereal.
trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then my brother, and he was speaking so fast. I mean, the practitioner that I was with, she couldn't write it all down, so she ended up having to record it. And yeah, so he was speaking really fast, and yeah, we're having a full conversation with him. So things started to
Okay.
happen quite quickly after he passed away.
Yeah, wow. That's a really strong um communication with spirit that one of the strongest I think I've ever really heard. I've heard like a lot of people that have had experience with signs, but that is like next level in terms of communication, which is amazing, which I think is so fitting for what you're going through and for the path, and for you to be able to facilitate that healing and those experiences, hopefully for other people, which is incredible that you've kind of had that. It's almost like that push to be like, this is real, and like to make you really believe it. And so then from that point, did you start feeling better? And because you were like, okay, I can communicate with him in spirit, that means that I don't have to go and pass on.
Yeah, it gave me a job, like, so
Mm.
from that I ditched all of my grief books. The I couldn't read them anymore because it was just so sad, and also it was just so sad reading other people's words, knowing that there was that many people in pain. It made me feel quite ignorant, like, where have I been hiding under a rock my whole life? Like, I didn't realize that this pain even existed. And so from there, I went on, like, just reading anything I could about quantum healing, quantum physics for dummies, or whatever I could digest and just completely fill my consciousness up with life after life and energy and spirit. And yeah, like, yeah, anything that was to do with spirituality, energy healing. And that's kind of where I started to really learn so much. And from there, I kind of was having all of these experiences, and the experiences were just jumping out to me in all of these books. So I knew I was onto something. There was like tangible stuff going on. And And then I sought out all the right kind of healers and therapists as well after that. So yeah, it was great.
And so you work with somatic healing, which is how I know it to be, is that it's sort of like the mind, body, and energy connection, where it's not just mind healing, you're healing like the trauma that's stored within your body because you need to like release it. If that is that correct?
Yeah, so you're working with the mind, the body, and the soul.
Okay.
And so your spiritual self, like everything that's existing within your inner landscape. And a lot of the time, that's really buried under a lot of this trauma and this grief and anything that you've kind of been through, even with programming, conditioning. And so underneath there in that inner, when you take that deep descent and that dive into your body and you start doing all of this clearing physically through your body, you start to spiritually evolve. It comes along for the ride. And it's such an important facet of healing as well, because awareness and pure consciousness is healing. I mean, that's healing on the quantum level. And so, yeah, we start to really move through a lot of that trauma first. And that's why a lot of people get into somatic healing for so many different reasons, and so many different facilitators, like kind of looking at, working with different people and coaching in different ways. But for me, this is where like my spiritual awakening and development just skyrocketed. And this is how I completely like reestablished my relationship with my brother. So in terms of like where my work fits in the world with somatics, is definitely the mind, body, and the soul, but really through spiritual development and opening that portal and connecting to them in spirit. I really believe that like if we were connected to our higher selves and connected to them and that divine energy and that source energy, then life here is far more tolerable, and it's far more like it's easier to see it for what it is, rather than being stuck in the trenches of the pain that you've been in for such a long time.
No, I think that's very correct. And what experience did you have? Did your I mean, other traumas and I guess minor traumas in comparison to your losing your brother come up when you were doing this healing, and I guess hypnosis and somatic sort of healing? Were they sort of like, because I know the trauma can be the blockages in terms of like being open and to being in communication with your brother, but yeah, what came up for you during that time?
That is a really good question, because yeah, so the 5-week healing journey that I run, it goes far deeper than grief for a good reason. So we cover epigenetics, ancestral trauma clearing, inner child work, spiritual development. There's so much that's packed inside this, because the main trauma is, the loss is like the straw that broke the camel's back quite often. And so, all I wanted to deal with was my grief and to deal with the trauma of losing my brother. But there was so much other stuff coming up, like, how did this happen? Why does this narrative live in my family? Why does suicide run in the family? Where does that come from? Where's this mental health come from? Then you go into epigenetics, like your thought creates your belief, creates your reality, and that the narrative and the belief and the story that you're telling is what turns that blueprint on, that gene on. And so all of a sudden this narrative, can very easily become your reality. And then the inner child work, attachment theory, all these mum issues, and having therapists say to me, oh, you need to deal with the issues around your mum. And then I'm like, my mum? I don't want to deal with my mum. I want to deal with my brother. Like, I don't want to invest time and money and effort into dealing with my mum didn't raise us. Anyway, that was one of the best things I ever did, was to heal through inner child, shadow work. Especially shadow work when it comes to suicide loss, the shame, the guilt, the regret, all of the arguments, all the things that you ever did that you can blame yourself for along the way, that all sits in the shadows, in the darkness. And that's there robbing you constantly of the truth. And so working with shadow work is so important as well, allowing the truth to actually come from that, and then bringing it into your wholeness so that you're not a triggered, reactive person anymore. Yeah, and then there's the ancestral trauma clearing as well, which kind of linked into what I was saying before with the reality of mental health and becoming that chain breaker. Because they say as well, especially with suicide loss, and with suicide loss, they say 150 people are affected. And I can imagine that a lot of those people aren't born yet. So like the eggs that are inside my body that I'm carrying, my children, for instance.
Is that 100, sorry, is that 150 people in of, I guess, ancestry bubble, like in a family? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, no, because
Wow.
I can't see 150 people being affected
Yeah.
that are alive right now. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but as soon as I kind of read that from the Alliance of Hope, I looked at that and I thought that would make sense if we're talking about the generations to come.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, of course, like people at school, work, home, friends, there are, I mean, I don't even know if I know 150 people. So, but going forward, like having children and the generations that are to come, yeah, of course, like if this trauma lives within my cells and it's going to influence me as a parent and my relationships, then yeah, it's going to keep rippling out into the world. So making that decision to heal on like so many facets is really important.
Yeah. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but how did just having one parent and just having your dad throughout this process affect the healing? Because I can imagine that would be, I mean, yeah, how was that experience for you?
Um, I mean, in terms of my dad and I and Jack, like that was normal in our life anyway. It was just the three of us. So by Jack leaving and then just having my dad, we did try to like kind of build this family union and then all kind of pile in together, but everyone's views were different. Blame was going around. Everyone becomes their own detective and trying to find out like what happened and was it your fault? Was it this? Was it that? And actually we just put the relationship to bed, my mum and I, and my dad and I healing together. We were on a very similar pathway in terms of, like I said to you before, like I'd go and see a shaman and spend time in a plant medicine ceremony, and then my dad would book a flight a week later and go and do it as well, because he was playing catch ups with me basically, and he was watching how I was healing and then wanting to learn himself. So we grieved and we healed quite similarly, I would say. But in terms of the other side of my family, no.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, like it would form a very strong bond with you and your dad. I can imagine. And did you? I saw that you came back to Australia to visit the where your brother had traveled to. Is that right?
Yeah, so he had a journal that he kept, and so we found his journal, and you know what it's like when you just read their words and their writing, everything just becomes so precious, doesn't it? Every little like word he wrote, and I wanted to live it, just not read it. So we followed his road trip from his journal, and we traveled around Western Australia, and we went all the way up to pretty much Darwin, and then stopped all along the way, and we spread some of his ashes. Also like recreated photographs that he had where we would try and find the exact spot that he stood in and things like that. And it was really emotional, it was really cathartic, but it kind of felt like a ceremony of sorts, you know, like yeah, it felt like a process we needed to go through.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I've definitely had those experiences, even like the night after mum died, and it was the last time that I'd been in that spot was when I was with her, and just sort of the alignment of the whole thing was really strange. And then even reading letters that she'd written after she'd passed, well, she'd written them obviously before she'd passed, but we read them maybe like months later because I just couldn't read them straight afterwards because it was just like too intense. And some of it was just too weird. It almost felt like she was trying to communicate with us in the letters that she was writing after she died, because it was like so fitting to how we felt in that moment. It was just the craziest thing of reading them. I was like, I feel like she's literally talking to me right now, but it's like she's telling me what I need to hear. It was just so strange, those sorts of, yeah, those experiences.
Yeah.
And how was hypnosis sort of played a part in your healing experience? Because I mean, I've used it a lot, but I haven't used it in grief healing. I've used it in other forms of inner child and money and love sort of ways, but not with grief. So how can that play a part?
Well, a lot of the deep, like the heavier duty clearing, I guess, was done through hypnotherapy and then hypnosis. And that really helped me with PTSD. For example, like when I found my brother, I couldn't I couldn't process the memory, and I couldn't process the truth, and I couldn't allow it. And I was so triggered. So every single time, you know, I collapsed in that moment outside his house, for example. So that I was stuck in that time, that energy was generated and locked within my body. So every single time I would hear a loud noise or my name being called or something that would trigger that response, I'd collapse. And mentally, I'd always see myself back there, and I would dream it, think it would just be ruminating, and my brain was so short-circuited, and I couldn't get past the driveway and with the paramedic and everything. And so with hypnotherapy, I was able to get past reframe, reprogram, and then do what I needed to do, and actually allow my body to just activate and that energy to process and sequence out. So I stopped looping back to that space, which really helped with PTSD effects. Then with hypnosis I used like probably daily, in terms of like helping my nervous system recalibrate. Confidence was a big one, so I could actually start talking about what happened in my experience, and finding my truth and activating my voice. I have used hypnosis. I still use it now. Sometimes I use subliminal hypnosis as well, and just have it on when I sleep.
I do that too.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like food for the soul. It really is. It's like all the content that lives within there, just knowing that it's just being nourished and reprogrammed and reframed. I do self-hypnosis as well. So, you know, I'll go through self-inquiry and find out I wrote some down this morning, for example, like things that I'm super grateful for, but emotions that are living within my body at the moment that just keep coming up. And so now I'll do like a self-hypnosis around that, so I can just really start to, reframe this stuff, so it doesn't because it's stronger than affirmations. You know, affirmations are great if you've already done all your clearing, but affirmations otherwise will just sit on top of all of the blockages you already have and not break through.
It's like that conscious, it will enter your conscious mind, but if your subconscious is telling you something different, it's gonna stay in that same patterning. It's not going to hear the affirmations. It's like you've got to do the inner work and the subconscious work for them to stick, or for them to be able to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. And tapping is great as well. Have you used much tapping before?
Yeah, I have. I do it sometimes just if I feel like I called to, but I haven't consistently done it enough, I feel like, to really get the effects. But I remember I did it after I broke up with my boyfriend, and I felt okay, but then I didn't, and I just started bawling my eyes out. But it was really healing and like really nice. But it does help a lot, but I need to explore that more. But even the other day, I had a really bad headache, and then I was like, just tried to do tapping, and it was interesting after like 5 minutes how much that even helped for just like a headache. I was like, I didn't really think it would, but it did. And that's what I mean, I've had a lot of experiences with trauma releasing from my body, which I think it was trauma, but I didn't really know that it was at the time. Like, I had a lot of meditations where and this is probably a good question to ask, because I actually don't know if it is or not, but I would do these like activations and sort of hypnosis and meditations where I would almost like, it would be speaking, being like, release this from your body. And this was at the start of the year after mum had passed, and I'd gone through so much, and my body would just start like involuntarily shaking. And I didn't really understand that would happen. I actually had no idea that was even a thing. And it just started shaking. My legs started shaking, my arms started shaking, and I just had no idea what was happening, but I kind of just let it happen. And then I started looking it up, and I thought it was some like Kundalini sort of thing. I didn't really know what was going on, but it just kind of kept on happening, but I felt so much better afterwards. And so is that a way that energy or trauma can be released, or is that just me making it up?
Yeah. And that's amazing that your body, that you can surrender and let go so much so in in a meditative space where you can start to actually release and sequence this out of your body, because like you'll find through like a breathwork healing ceremony, for instance, that when you go through that emotional catharsis, because what happens is when you've started to open up this energy, which is like formed and stagnated in the body, so you can think of it as like balls of mass. And so once this has started to thaw open and start moving through your body, which has been held all in your tissues, your muscles, your fascia, and your nervous system, it activates. And also you've kind of given permission to your body there to say, I surrender, I let go, and I want to move this energy through. So yeah, that will start moving through in the form of shaking. Sometimes it can feel like it's really trudging through your body. So, you know, like think of yourself like an oily pan, like you have all of this oil and all of this trauma, it's all clogged up within the body. And as soon as you activate and you allow it to start traveling through, it will start moving through your nervous system. Some people get tetany, so it can feel like tight cramp as it's moving through, which is often if they're holding on to a lot of fear, and your hands are obviously, arms are connected to your heart. And then I was a convulser. So actually, like my body would really convulse. You know, sometimes when you're in bed and you're super tired and you're just flinch and like you're shaking.
Yeah.
Twitching, yeah, like quite like solid twitching. I would I'd be like Shaky Stevens, like the whole thing would just be moving around. And it depends as well, like where the energy is held. Sometimes, you know, like if there's a lot of resentment or anger, everything around the jaw can get super duper tight. It can, a whole like variety and range of things can happen to the body physically. But yes, the energy is physically moving through the body. And you'll see that like toddlers will do this, you know, they'll have a tantrum, they're regulating naturally just from their instincts, and they'll shake, or they have these big tantrums. And then, you know, animals in the wild, they'll all shake off their trauma. And so that naturally we're sequencing it out. But as adults, you know, because we're not really taught how to process this energy, we do naturally cry, but our behaviors will kick in. So we'll scream, we'll smash things, we'll have rage, we'll go into an argument or a fight, or we'll activate protective mechanisms, we'll close in, we'll withdraw, and then we get anxiety, depression, chronic illnesses and disease and things like that. So when you open yourself up, yeah, you allow this energy to instantly leave your body, just as instant as the energy came into your body from a trauma.
Yeah, and that is something that I found very, I guess, profound, that it was hard to understand when it was happening because it was so instant. It was almost like these things that held me back for so long that were not even related to mum passing, like a lot of insecurity stuff that I was really insecure growing up, and my mum had the same thing, and I think I kind of mirrored that from her as well. But it held me back so much in my life, and then when I really tried to focus on that energy and release it, it was literally instant though. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. Like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm completely fine how I am, and nothing's like going to stop me. But it was really strange having that parallel, sort of like those parallel thoughts. I mean, like, how could I have just been thinking one way for so long and then it instantly changed? But it made me realize that it doesn't have to be like, obviously a lot of emotion can come up with healing, but it doesn't have to be something that is traumatic, especially if someone has gone already through a traumatic event. I feel like healing can be quite intimidating, and it can be, especially going to a therapist, it can be something that we see that we need to do if we're broken, and not something that we can be such a beautiful thing. Like those experiences in my mind have been the most magical, grounding, amazing experiences, but it's just not something that you would imagine through healing. And I think, how is these healing experiences for you, sort of, has it changed your perception on healing in a way, or as therapy, or as I guess dealing with trauma, how has it sort of shifted, if it has at all?
Yeah, I mean, so firstly, trauma lives within the body. And so many of my clients, including myself, will say that when they've gone through talk therapies, that it hasn't fundamentally made a change. When the trauma is so big and you're just circulating and you're going round and round and round in circles and communicating it, what do you have left to say? And also it really raises that self-awareness, and it's great for mindset, mind shift work. But in terms of actually releasing the energy, you look to the body. So actually it is quite scary when you go for the first time to see a therapist or a healer.
Yeah.
But what's incredible about it is that when you go and see a healer, for instance, all they're interested in is the root cause. They want to find out what's at the very root of all of this energy, you know, like, why are you having the symptom of anxiety or depressive thoughts? What's the story underneath that? And to go all the way to that root of the story. But doing this when you're healing through the body is when you penetrate that subconscious mind and you have access to all of the answers there. And so when you go there, you start, for an example, like I was working with a guy who brother passed away. And through his life, he was always suffering with digestive issues and IBS. And he tried all kinds of like gluten-free and like celiac diets and things like that. And he'd been to see so many different people. And, you know, he was like, I think it's a trauma that's living at the base of this, but I had it before my brother passed away. And so we go into breath work, rebirthing breath work, and then hypnotherapy combined in one session. And we go all the way back to the very moment that it ever appeared in his body. And he was in a nappy and he was 2 years old and he was playing in the street, and he was getting told off and asked to get in a play fight or something like that. So in that moment, now he's like a 30-odd-year-old man, but now he's with me crying as a 2-year-old, getting out the energy that he needed to say that he couldn't express at that time. So he can release his energy from his body, change the perception, which then changes his body chemistry. And so that energy is no longer held within his body. So he takes the 2-year-old, he says to the 2-year-old through inner child work, like, I'm here, buddy, like you're good, like, and then merging him into his 30-odd-year-old body now. And then now he's gone on, and this trauma, this energy is no longer there being triggered by outside experiences. And so now he doesn't suffer. He's not celiac, or he doesn't have to, he can eat what he wants, and he doesn't have these digestive issues. So everything comes from an emotional reason. When you go and see somebody like in Western medicine, for instance, they don't sit there with you for 2 hours going through all of this and finding out the root of what's going on. They don't find the trauma that's living within your body. And then we're all scratching our heads like, why are suicide rates so high? Because there's energy that's sat right in that's influencing us as adults. We are adults, we're children running around in adults' bodies with traumatized, because the thing is that 2-year-old found that obviously very distressing at that time, but the 30-odd-year-old didn't. But the 30-year-old was paying the price for it and suffering with digestive issues and not understanding why, which affects his moods, because your gut is directly linked to all of your brain and serotonin and everything.
To think that there'd be so many people out there dealing with a variety of any sort of illness or any sort of anything, like a physical manifestation of an emotional trauma that they have no idea about, is just insane. To think that we're just so, I guess, disconnected from linking the two is insane. But I guess it's an amazing opportunity to open that door. But is that something that a pathway that you kind of want to go into more with trauma, of like very much focused in the body?
That's all I do anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
Yeah, so that's all I do, because it works, and it saved my life. It changed my life, you know. Now, like, and the thing is as well is, like, initially, yeah, you need guidance, like with anything. So, you know, you'll go to a breath work or EFT tapping facilitator, you'll go to a hypnotherapist and a hypnosis, whatever, or somatic experiencing. So you'll find the therapist, like, and a lot of therapists like me do a lot of modalities, work with a lot of modalities, sorry. But so you'll be guided, but in that time, I think the future of mentoring and coaching is changing in terms of actually educating people how to do it. So it's like, here's my service and here's what we're going to do to help you heal, but I'm also going to teach you how to do it yourself. Not that you become qualified, but you are qualified in your own rights to sit in your own living room with self-inquiry, somatic inspection, and then finding out what is alive for you in your body, and also having the resources that, like you can get for free. Hypnosis on YouTube. There's millions of people out there helping people to heal naturally with resources and modalities. So just finding that person to kind of guide you in the beginning, learning the ropes, and, you know, you do your own breath work, you do your own energy healing. You become your own healer. We have everything we need in our biology to heal ourselves.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And it is so important to give that importance back to people, I think, to not be so externalizing the healing, to be like, you need this other person to fix you, because then it feels like we don't have the power within ourselves. And I think it's an amazing place to kind of to have that relationship of the healer and the wanting to be healed, but also then them forming as one. And I guess, what's a tip for someone that is at home or just hasn't really done any of this work to kind of get into it, to maybe understand how they could communicate with their body or sort of see where tension or trauma may be stored. And I know it's really beneficial and important to work with someone when you're opening up to this, but just, I guess, a basic sort of exercise that someone could use.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea. So firstly, I would say, okay, so someone's feeling like dysregulated, or they're feeling a certain emotion quite intensely. So first of all, I would say get into box breathing. So where you breathe in through the nose, say for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and sigh out of the mouth for 4. This is going to activate your parasympathetic drive, and it's going to drop you into your body, and it's going to exit the monkey mind. And so you're going to be able to do some self-inquiry when you're in this space, because you're moving out of survival mode. So I would do this probably 10 times or something, just get until you feel nice and lucid and relaxed. Then what I would do is I would say, okay, what emotion am I feeling the strongest right now? And trust your body's first response, because your body is a healing machine and your subconscious mind will communicate with you. So let's just say, for example, what emotion am I feeling the strongest right now? Anxiety. Oh, okay. Or grief. Let's go with grief. Okay. And so where is this grief held the strongest in my body? And your body will react. So maybe your stomach tightens, maybe your throat tightens, or maybe you hunch your shoulders. So you know, like, oh God, it's there, it's right there. And then it's like, okay, how strongly out of 10 am I feeling this emotion? 10. So now you've located, identified, and objectifying the emotions. So be like, okay, what color is grief? Black. Is it hot or cold? Cold. How big is it? It's big. Okay, I found it. All right, grief. I'm going to ask you now to take me back to the very first time that you ever came into my body. Just please show me what you want, what you want me to see. What do you want me to communicate? How do you want me to communicate with you? What do you want me to understand? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your mind will start showing you like, oh God, it's uncomfortable. I'm here. I'm back in this place. This is where my grief entered my body. Like, I'm really feeling it now. I'm really in that space of grief. Nothing else is going on in my reality, because I'm right here, right now in the grief. And the grief is like, thank the Lord. I've been trying to communicate with you for how long? And so then now you're like, okay, grief, I get it. You can start crying, feeling the content of grief, feeling the stories of grief, really understanding grief. And then say, okay, body, I'm going to ask you now to start releasing this grief. Lie down. You can even say, nervous system, I give you permission to start moving this grief. Please help me release this grief from my body. And you will find that perhaps your body starts twitching, it starts shaking, and just do this deep breathing. And then just deeply breathe into your body, and then just release on the exhale until you feel it go down in intensity. It's one of the most powerful and quickest ways of self-inquiry, and then releasing energy from your body physically yourself. And it gets addictive, because after that, it's like, ooh, what else lives inside of me?
Yeah, I can imagine. Even now, I'm like, I want to do that. Like, even when you were doing it for that little 5 seconds and I kind of went with it, my back has a lot, my back twitch when you're like, something would twitch, and they're like the muscles kind of my shoulders. And I did this interview with my friend Laura, who's a Reiki practitioner, the other day, and she was saying, I mean, I haven't really met her, but she was saying that over FaceTime that she could see that there was a lot of I guess emotion and grief in my shoulders, and I'm always like going like this and always moving them. And I've never really thought about it, but now, and then I tried to breathe into it the other day, and then I had a really bad sleep and my back was like hurting. Like, it was almost like I woke up and it was a lot of more tension in my shoulders than there was beforehand when I kind of breathed into that space. Can that happen, that you can kind of experience pain when it's shifting as well?
Yeah, I mean, imagine like how painful it was when it came into your body. The pain from your grief that entered your body, it needed somewhere to go. And so it went there, it went around your higher chakras, around your lungs, there around your rib cage. It's moved across now into your shoulder blades. It's in your upper spine. And so now it's manifesting as tension. And then, you know, if it's not being released, then obviously that affects your life. Oh, I have a bad back, or I can't drive, I can't sleep well, I'm not sleeping very good, I'm eating rubbish food now because I didn't sleep very well, now I'm putting on weight, now I feel depressed, I've got anxiety because I can't lose weight. And then over time, doctor, I have a really bad back, I don't know what to do. Oh, here you go, here's some medication, you could put that. Oh, I'm on medication, I'm having side effects from this medication, you know. Oh, I've just seen that it has suicidal ideation on the back. I mean, this is a story, but this is how it can go. And also,
That's a common thing that happens when you think about
yeah,
it.
and then you're hobbling around as an old lady. I've got a really bad back, I've got arthritis, I take all these drugs. And so it's actually, no, Mimi, remember when your mum passed away, how painful that was? And remember how that emotion got trapped there within your body? Did you start releasing it and sequencing it out of your body? Did you work with holistic healing methods to do that? And most people in the world would say no.
And to think that like, and you're never done. I don't think you're ever finished healing. I think that like I've even been guilty of being like, okay, I've done enough now, I'm good. And it's like, it's still, and it takes a long time and it takes a lot of work. As amazing as it can be, it's like there's always going to be things to clear out. But
Yeah.
yeah, crazy that I need to do something. Like, can you do massage as well? Can that help in terms of moving the tension, or is it better to, I guess, do the emotional and hypnosis side of things to really get to the root of it?
So I would use massage if it was kind of like in that body work of moving energy. So it's the intention. So sometimes if I don't have someone around me that can really start moving that energy through my body, where the intention's not there, it's not that kind of place, then I will lay there having the massage, thinking, as like she's massaging my back, like what's alive for me in that area. And then I'll start communicating almost like with my tissues and with my nervous system. And then really the intention is very powerful. But yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of massage, I actually do go to people that work more on that energetic spiritual level of what's trapped inside the body. Body work is amazing as well. It's painful, but when they are actually stimulating and waking up everything in the fascia, oh,
So sick.
yeah, it's like a purge. And yes, you're right about the journey continuing, because I was kind of on my high horse there for a while, like, oh yeah, I've done so much so much work. Like I use my tools for sure every day, but in terms of doing like the big clearing, I haven't felt like that's something I've needed in a while. And then I had a seizure at the weekend, and around a situation that I hadn't experienced before. So yeah, there's another layer that's just exposed itself now, like, okay, Becky, well done, you've got so far, but now there's this to look at.
Yeah, and it's going to put you in a different situation that you haven't been in post this experience and post this trauma. Everything's new. Also, every experience you have kind of after experiencing something traumatic, it's like something shifts and you experience things in a different way. And yeah, I mean, that's really interesting and like that it does like keep coming back up. And in terms of like clients, what's been your most, I mean, do you work with them one on one? And then in terms of like working with them over, how long do you work with them for over their journey?
So I work with them for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And then maybe monthly, like they'll come and do a session, but I teach them everything as well. So how to actually do a lot of this healing themselves, and qualify them at Reiki as well, so they can heal themselves with Reiki. So by the end of it, they're doing their own breath work, tapping, Reiki, somatic healing, self-hypnosis, meditation, and all sorts, and muscle testing, like applied kinesiology. So the 5 weeks that we're together is quite intense, because there's like the whole theory side of everything, like self-study and learning the healing modalities and that bridging science and spirituality together. And then there's the practical sessions as well. So, that's where we do a lot of the deep clearing and healing. And then there's a portion in those sessions where I actually then teach them how to go away and then do practice that themselves.
Yes. You come out of it with just so much, I guess, self-knowledge and just knowledge of how to like even help others around you. Like I know from my experience that anytime I would do something like this or like do hypnosis, I would just want to tell everyone about it and be like, you need to do this. Like it's so amazing. And it's almost like this chain of events. Like you heal yourself, but then you almost heal others by just by doing it in a way.
Yeah, well, it's like hurt people, and healed
Mm,
people help heal people. And going back to that, what the Alliance of Hope had said about the 150 people being left behind and affected, well, not left behind, but being affected, ones that are here and perhaps not born yet. But you think about 150 people, and so imagine when you do this work, how many people that ripple effect is going to
wow.
change. When you've gone through trauma, especially with suicide loss, like you have an you're emotionally invested in seeing that change, but we can't expect other people to do it. You know, like why would Tom, Dick, and Harry or any Joe blogs or be emotionally invested in creating that change? Politicians or however many structures it has to filtrate through to create change. You know, there's so many systems in place that affect that last individual's decision to take their life. The biggest change happens through social movement in most situations. And so the people that are emotionally invested are the ones who have been traumatized. So it's the one who's been traumatized that needs to do the healing, that can create the ripple effects in the world, that ripple effect will then bring suicide rates down. So that's why it's so important to learn how to heal, as well as receiving the healing from someone. And when you've been victimized naturally through trauma, it's very easy to then continue that ripple effect of being victimized through giving your power away to external resources, you know, receiving medications or things like that, that perhaps you rely on for a long period of time. It's not a very empowering approach compared to you healing yourself. Is obviously very empowering, and it changes your mindset, and you do become very like mission driven, and you want to be the change that you wish to see in the world. So yeah, it's like a work in progress that's not going to happen overnight, but in terms of the future and children and going forward, we're the chain breakers, and we really are the ones that do make the change.
And so amazing to think that that ripple effect can obviously be negative, but there's also a positive to that. That, like you were saying, that there is, yeah, the healing can ripple onto the people around you, and if you take on that, it's like vibrating on other people's energy. It's like if you walk into a room and can feel someone else's negativity. It's the same with positive energy, and the same with healing, and it almost brings back that importance of that. Yeah, like you were saying, of taking responsibility for your trauma, because it there's so much that can come from it. And think that maybe sometimes people feel somewhat not selfish for dealing with their trauma, but I guess for a lot of people that have been, the role they maybe have put themselves in has been caring for others, and I guess not putting themselves first. And it might be harder to see themselves as being worthy of the healing. What could you give a tip for someone that might not feel like they deserve to be healed in a way?
Yeah, I mean, that is quite painful, because there's a lot of guilt surrounding that as well, thinking that you don't deserve it, or guilty of it perhaps. I think, of course, like you are completely worthy, and the thing is that finding that part of you that realized how short life was and how precious it was, and that it really can just get swept beneath your feet very quickly. That's the kind of energy that most of us have experienced after that initial loss, is really that kind of energy where you just think, how do you want to live the rest of this short time that we are here? What part do you want to play? Do you have a desire within you that you can ignite to try and find out what's in store for you, or what you can change in this world? And not feeling worthy as well, I would say that to kind of shift from that mindset, just small tips like exercises, perhaps like journaling, and even listening to like subliminal hypnosis, anything that can just create the smallest vibrational shift into feeling somewhat worthy. And then the action from there will come from the shift that you've created.
Okay, amazing. And what do you think is the most valuable experience you've had throughout this whole 3.5 year journey? A hard question to just drop on you.
It's a really good question. My most valuable experience, I really saw my brother's passing there was a moment that I felt it and I've never forgotten it, and that my brother's passing was like his last gift to me. So the most valuable experience, looking at it like that, was that my brother's passing is potentially going to save thousands of people's lives by the time that I pass away. So the legacy and the momentum and like the mission behind it, the story behind it, you know, like I really feel like there's a gift in everything in the most mysterious ways, and as painful as it is, it's almost like I can look at his passing in some weird way, like on a collective level, as like a sacrifice. Because even though this might be a deeper karmic soul agreement, I'm unsure right now, but I can look at it like that. Like he sacrificed him to activate me to help others. And if that's how I have to sleep at night with peace, knowing that that's my truth, then so be it, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's like finding the beauty in the places where it's the darkest. It's like if you can see the beauty in it, then that's where you find the light, and that's where you find like the guidance, is having that beautiful view on it. Which is, did you ever feel guilty for feeling that, like the light in it? Did you ever feel like that you needed to feel negative about it when you felt those feelings, or not really?
Yeah, I had a near-death experience
Oh.
3 years ago, and I went to that place where they all are, and it's insane. Like it's incredible, it's beautiful, it's home. Like this isn't home.
What happened, if you, I mean, don't mind me asking, but
I was yeah, I had an accident in Bali,
wow.
and before I moved there, and when I came back, I was like looking at my body like, I can't believe I'm a human. This is insane. Like, this is crazy to be a human. And like, after that was like listening to music for the first time, and everything was greener, more colorful, more connected to life. Caring was, you know, about, I went vegan after that and sold my business straight away. Like everything was just very clear that you're just playing a game down here, and that this reality is kind of like this kind of sick, twisted game that we go through in order to transmute everything into light, and then we go back there. So after that, I really realized that I had nothing to be guilty of, but everything to just enjoy and be and try to always harness that energy, and remember to just to be free and not to take anything too seriously.
Insane. And what happened when you were in the in between, or in the, I guess, the passing over in between state? I don't know what it's called, but
so first of all, I was being thrown around like a rag doll, and it was like okay, so first of all, it was like all of the universal principles and laws come to light. So there's just information that's just being, it's like a telepathy, or it's almost like how, you know, on the Matrix when the green things come down the screen, like just like that. That's the best way I can describe it, where it's just in your head, and it's like just knowledge that's just streaming through, and it's just instant, and there's just an infinite amount of it. But it's all based, for me, it was all based around like the universal laws and the universal principle, how we're governed on these things. And the first thing that I went through was like a karmic loop. And so I was being spun around in this ball of light, and it was like a frisbee, and I couldn't slow it down. And in this loop, I was identified with my name, my pain, my trauma, my mum, my personality, like every single part. So my ego was this frisbee, and I kept saying like, no, like, please let me stop, and like, I didn't hear anything. There's no words, but the message was, no, you have to let go. You have to let go of you have to release. You have to forgive. You have to forgive your karma. You have to let go of the karma and release the pain. But I was holding on to it, and I was identifying with it. And I was like, no, like, you can't have my pain. You can't have this. You can't have that. And so it was just throwing me faster and faster. And then eventually it was just like, okay, I surrender. You just, please stop spinning me around. Like, just let me go. And after that, I've released all that pain and the trauma, and like just years, if not like generations worth of pain from my body. And then from there, it was like the most iridescent, beautiful, freeing light. Like the frequency is higher than love. It's bliss. Nothing else lives there apart from that frequency that I found. And it was invisible light. Like I've never seen. It's not here. It's like, it's just diamond light kind of thing, and they're in colors that they were so iridescent. And after that, there was a feeling of oneness. And so I was looking for my brother as him in his personality and his form and everything, but I was him and he was me. There was no separation. There was nothing.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was every tree, plant, cow, you. There is no you are me. Then there's just the one. And so coming back from that was a bit, I had to go into like, find a therapist to help me integrate it, because I couldn't process.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's hard to bring into a physical world when you've had a very mind-blowing non-physical experience that is just insane.
I'd say things like, don't worry, the universe has got your back. And I'd be like, wait, the universe doesn't have your back. You are the universe. Hang on, I have to find new catchphrases and new analogies.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. And when even I catch myself saying those things. I'm like, it's the universe like pushing you into that thing. It's like, but you are it. But it is, it's like, it is, I mean, yeah, it's hard to comprehend, like living, I guess, with your ego as well. Like, how do you find how to manage the relationship that you have with, I guess, your ego, because it's such a part of our physical reality. What do you kind of do to manage that?
I think like I just work on with identifying the ego and deconstructing the truth, the lies, what it means for me. Is it important? You can get so wrapped up in the ego for sure. But I think as well, like just not constantly, I do my own big energy clearing sessions where you bypass that egoic mind and you drop into that body, and then you're having quite out of body experiences. So the time I find of allowing that ego to rest grows longer each time. And so I can gain more moments of peace from ego. And
did you find that it after your near-death experience, it quietened a bit? Like your ego wasn't as loud? I find what it would not be.
It was kind of like it was like my higher self is really bossy, and she came in and took over. And it was like the Becci that was before couldn't make the decisions because she was just so like mousy, like, oh, I don't know, or I'm worried about this, or I've built up my business and I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that, just worrying and fretting over stuff. Then when I came back from there, it was like game on. And it was like, who on earth is making these decisions? Because she is powerhouse and she's charging and she's just like, yes, no, full in her intuition and like instinctual. And also it was, like I'd look at some people and I could see depression, I could see anxiety, because I would see like a cloud around them that would be gray or something, and then where it was inside their body. And that was also super strange, because I'd be like, I never saw you like that before, but you look very depressed.
Does that still happen?
Yeah, when I do more clearing and things like that, yeah, for sure.
And I think that's an amazing gift to have, especially with the work that you do. And obviously no, I'm not anyone taking it personally, but I think to be able to work with people and to see where their pain is stored and to see what they're carrying could be really beautiful, to almost see that like leave them after the healing, really.
Only takes a moment of realization, and sometimes you
Mm.
already know all of the answers, but when someone else can look at you and they can say, I feel, don't, you can take this or leave this, but I feel this and this and this. And when I look at you, I feel like this is what you're holding on to and this is what you're doing. And as soon as somebody else, it's like that double confirmation, but they already knew it and you just read it on them. And it only takes a moment like that for things to shift.
So true. It's like the mirror reflecting back, but it actually like the mirror talks to you and gives that validation back to a part of it. It's like almost like the part of you just wants to be seen. Like the trauma wants to be seen and the depression wants to be seen and wants to be given love because maybe it's been neglected or maybe it hasn't, it's there, but you haven't really looked at it directly because it's been quite, I guess, scary or for whatever reason why you haven't looked at it.
Yeah. And I think in the early days, like, like, okay, I have a 10-ton of trauma stored within my body. But if you're not aware that this energy can be released and worked with, and it can, transmute into something far higher, if you hold on to this energy for so long and, it turns into chronic disease or chronic personality, where sometimes it's like 10 years down the line and you identify with someone who was always anxious, or I was always like this, I was always short-tempered, I was always a shopaholic, and it's not the truth. It's just because the trauma had to turn into something else. It came out some way or another.
And in terms of children, have you worked with children before? And because obviously we are obviously children walking around because we live through our subconscious, and anything that's happened with our inner child or something that's happened, a traumatic event that we've caught on to, and we're like little sponges when we're kids. Have you, or would you want to work with children to sort of like release their trauma, or is there a period of time that's needed? I guess you have the trauma and then it needs to be almost integrated to then release it. Like, what's the process there? Because I've always wondered if you could just experience something and then get it out of your body, like not having to wait so long.
Yeah. I think I've never worked with like young kids. I have worked with some clients, children, and I've taught a lot of my clients how to help their kids release this energy. But can you imagine, it's like an accumulative effect. So if all of the things that are happening throughout a child's life, if at every or nearly every time that they were able to communicate that and safely release it from their body and had a soul supportive family around them that kind of engaged with them in that and encouraged them and supported them, taught them, then over time that child is going to have built so much emotional intelligence and resilience that when everything accumulates over time, and then we get to that point of making that final decision, a point of crisis, you can only imagine that they have so much more capacity and room within themselves to be able to regulate than most of us do as adults. So that's why I particularly also love to teach my clients. Well, I do teach them, and I love teaching them how to heal, because that ripple effect, right? So obviously now when I go on and have kids, they're going to be very like emotionally intelligent, resilient,
tuned up. Exactly. Yeah, and that does show the importance of really figuring out your shit before having children, because it does pass on, and especially through like not your shit, I mean just anyone else like that are doing their own work. And I mean, have you had experience of, I guess ancestral trauma is such a thing, but in terms of passing trauma through utero, how does that happen, and does that happen?
Well, so I mean, with my family, there were, like grandparents and things like that. And I'm just going to say, I'm sorry that I'm spilling the beans, but there's it's the truth. There was a lot of domestic violence. There was a lot of oppression, and there was you know, there's a lot of neglect, narcissism. Sorry, I need to cough. Excuse me. And so then they go on and have, you know, my parents. And so now they're raised in this household, they're exposed to that. They've got this survival energy living within their bodies. They're naturally triggered and want to run for the hills every time that they hear a fight downstairs and things like that. And they're punished differently. And yeah, my nan not having a job, not really having a voice, having panic attacks, not leaving the house. There's all sorts of stuff going on, like behind their closed doors. And then now, so then, you know, my parents are wounded adults that then fall in love and then go and have kids, and then voila, here we go. So now we've just got there's a lot of beauty in the families as well. Of course, there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of love. But when the going gets tough, that wasn't really always the energy that was alive. And so, you know, I was sat in it as an egg inside my mum's womb and my nan's whilst they were going through oppression, and then being raised within a household where there's a lot of that survival energy. And so, yeah, that's been passed down. So we mirror our parents. We seek for approval. We see their behaviors. We don't even identify ourselves as separate from the mother for the first few years. And my mum didn't know how to mother and be warm and be nurturing and that kind of thing. So you seek it elsewhere. You find behaviors. You know, I would always have to be really dramatic to get attention. Always have to be so over the top, but only now I'm an adult do I realize it's because I had to do that as a kid, and now I'm an adult that's trying to. So things get passed down in their own way. And then obviously with mental health, there was always a narrative like all men in our family suffer with mental health, and you tell someone that enough, it's like watching TV all the time. You're going to get hypnotized. You're going to constantly think that you're in a state of emergency. Like, people are brainwashed now. And you are being hypnotized, like mind control. And so the default is there. You've turned that gene on, you've turned that blueprint on. So when the going gets tough, that narrative is like, oh, wait a minute. I remember that I've been told for 20 odd years that suicide runs in the family, the doctor's worried about it, and then, you know, it's something that then you can go towards. It's an option.
And it's familiar. It's something that your subconscious knows it feels right. And I think that's the big thing that with trauma as well, is that it does feel familiar and it feels safe. And that's why, like, like you're saying, and I've had that experience as well with mum was an alcoholic, and so was her dad, and they both died of alcoholism. And it's scary, that sort of thing, because I get really scared of becoming that, even though that I know that I won't. But it is almost that thing of, the more you say it, the more that you think that that could just be true, which is just a story that you tell yourself because it's something that you've seen and it's something that you expect to happen. I don't expect it to happen, but maybe deep down some little part of me thinks that is what will happen because I've seen it before. And it's like that unknown, and it is like breaking the chain and like taking responsibility and being like, no, I'm not going to do that, and seeing that it is just a story.
Yeah, and it is an energy thing as well. Like once you've said like no, and you do work with the releasing that energy and healing through that as well. But I think that, of course, don't get me wrong. So I mean, I would, if I had a baby tomorrow, I'd be like, oh shit, like this is really like I'm putting it to the test now. Like, I'm praying to God that I've done enough ancestral clearing, I've done enough trauma work, because I really don't want this narrative to be alive. But the energy is what really matters, right? The intention, the energy, everything behind it. Because yeah, that's the driving force. So the consciousness and the level of awareness that you have, even you have so much awareness around it. So the probability of it happening is probably very slim.
Yeah, I think, when you bring the awareness into it, and you can really see it for what it is and know and stand in your truth and be able to be like, okay, does that feel right to me, or is that just something that I've seen? And you will, I guess, deep down know what's meant for you, and and yeah, you just kind of have to like take every day like as it comes really, and to just connect back to yourself and to know that you have the power within yourself to create your reality. But in terms of your courses, and are they always running? So if people can access them.
Yeah, so the mini courses are always running. So
Mm.
they're kind of designed for people that would like an introduction and to experience what it's like to work with me. And then it's a really good first step into taking this path of healing. And then we have the opportunity at the end of that to do a healing ceremony together as well. Then the bigger journeys, so they're always running, but the 5-week healing journeys, I organize them with people either in one-on-one or in a group setting. And they typically run like every 8 weeks. I try to have those just because they are very intense.
And
So
can it
yes.
happen? Can someone that has experienced grief or loss or suicide loss, say 10 years ago, and they still are feeling the impact of the grief, can they be involved, or is it anyone, or is it more suited for someone that maybe is just passed? Doesn't matter really. Yeah.
No, it's for anyone. And to be honest with
Mm.
you, like the longer it's been left, because there's time in between, they might think or deny that they need that much guidance, or that there would be, there wouldn't be that much energy to release. I've been working with a lady who lost her brother 21 years ago, and her body is reacting exactly the same way. So not exactly the same way, but very similar ways to everyone else that has been healing through
And
grief, like recent grief.
do you find it's the experience and the response from the body like quite similar? Is there almost like a I know everyone's probably different, but is there almost like stages that your body goes through in releasing it that you see happen?
Yeah, in the beginning we work with like that real
Mm.
traumatic energy. There's no way other way
Mm.
around it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a lot of the catharsis, the shaking or the trembling or the tetany, or anything can happen around there. That will typically be like perhaps 2 or 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And then you really start to expand your light body, and you've created more spaciousness, and you are more expansive energetically. So that's when these spiritual or mystical experiences, or you experience your interdimensional self, the rest of yourself, different realms, dimensions, realities, connection to spirit, color, visuals, everything like that starts to happen as that trauma is being released. So it's kind of like there's no gain without going through that pain.
I'll let you go, but what do you think is the most incredible experience you've seen one of your clients go through? If you can say it, obviously if you can't, that's so fine.
There's a few.
You can say a few.
One of my clients had the color that was radiating off of her body was like she was sunbathing in a rainbow. So we did a big chakra clearing session, and so the colors radiating off of her were just incredible. And then I had a client whose hands were being held and whose hair was being stroked, so you could see her hair moving around, and then her hands were being held and she was being cuddled. I worked with a guy who was holding his son, but as he was holding his son, you could see this film, like a bubble, like a human shaped bubble, like a spirit, but cradled within his arms. And then you've seen things like just spirit moving around them, color and orbs and all kinds of action all going on around their body as they start healing. People have said they felt like they're levitating, they astral traveled, that they felt like they were being pulled from their belly button out of their body and then gone to the other side with their loved one. They come back a lot of the time with like there's also, I would say, like 5 or 6 out of 10 people then by the end are like, okay, where do I start? What do I study? I want to do this. And so a few people have then like now they're integrating from their jobs into this kind of line of work, which is just in like,
So
can you
amazing.
imagine? It's just the best feeling ever. So
To just
good.
open that up to someone, like that is just an insane, like to do that as your job and to have those experiences is just incredible. Like it's just unimaginable to think that that can happen as you work is just ridiculously amazing. Like, so incredible.
It's you forget that sometimes when you're in a situation, don't you? When it's you in it, you forget. But yeah, I think like that a lot of people that come to work with me, it's like it's almost game over for them. That's how they describe it. Like it's this, or I just don't know what else to do. Like you're my last hope. You're really are my last straw because I don't feel good at all. And so I'm like, okay, wow, God, let's go, let's do
No
it. And then
pressure.
yeah, but no, I mean, and then afterwards, they're just different, so different.
It's just, I mean, I think what you're doing is so amazing, and you obviously are so, and like you're saying, it's the combination of working with someone, and they are partly the healer, but I think that you are just so gifted at what you're doing, and it's so amazing to see the journey that you've gone through, and it only being like 3.5 years is not that long to think that like your brother passing and then going through all this trauma, and to come through the other side and to have healed and help others heal in this way is truly like just pure magic. So I can't like just thank you so much for doing it. I think it's just so
Thank you.
amazing. And I really think and I really hope that anyone that listens to this has, and I know they will have gained a lot, but if they know anyone that is suffering or know anyone that has experienced a loss or suicide loss that needs help, I really want to point you in the direction to Becci, because I think that you have something very different and something very special that it needs to be shared in the world. So yeah, just thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. There's one last question that is not related to anything to do with spirituality at all. I just love asking this question.
Fun.
If you could have one dinner